a story where the main character makes a mistake that leads to unpleasant consequences. Doesn't even have to be a large mistake, maybe a small mistake. But somebody makes a mistake, not even something that they're necessarily aware of, but something goes wrong, it's fault, at least in some sense, and there are unpleasant consequences. This theme of by midnight on Jupiter grades, and that'll be that. This is also the guidelines uploaded on the assignment there. So going back to Canto 34, as I said, those questions will be due Friday. They are posted on Jupiter with the assignment. Let's finish reading the Inferno here. So we were in Canto 34. We started yesterday, so 380 and 381. We had just seen the figure of Satan. Dante, at the beginning of the canto, had seen him from a distance and said he looked like a windmill. But here, let's take a closer look at him. So I'm actually going to read that bit again, where we get the description of Satan, of Lucifer, and we're going to talk about a number of different aspects of his appearance here. So we'll start from line 28, and so really from 28 to 69. So most of pages 380 and 381 is where we get this description of Satan. So let's take it. I'll read it through one time, and then we're going to take it one section at a time. Is what we're going to do. The king, line 28, of the vast kingdom of all grief, stuck out with half his chest above the ice. My height is closer to the height of giants than theirs is to the length of his great arms. Consider now how large all of him was, this body, in proportion to his arms. If once he was as fair as now he's foul, and dared to raise his brows against his maker, it is fitting that all grief should spring from him. Oh, how amazed I was when I looked up and saw a head, one head, wearing three faces. One was in front, and that was a bright red. The other two attached themselves to this one just above the middle of each shoulder, and at the crown all three were joined in one. The right face was a blend of white and yellow, the left the color of those people's skin who live along the river Nile's descent. Beneath each face, two mighty wings stretched out, the size you might expect of this huge bird. I never saw a ship with larger sails. Not feathered wings, but rather like the ones a bat would have. He flapped them constantly, keeping three winds continuously in motion to lock Cocytus eternally in ice. He wept from his 6 eyes, and down 3 chins were dripping tears all mixed with bloody slaver. In each of his 3 mouths he crunched a sinner, with teeth like those that rake the hemp and flax, keeping 3 sinners constantly in pain. The one in front, the biting he endured was nothing like the clawing that he took. Sometimes his back was raked clean of its skin. That soul up there who suffers most of all, my guide explained, is Judas Iscariot, the one with head inside and legs out kicking. As for the other 2 whose heads stick out, the one who hangs from that black face is Brutus. See how he squirms in silent desperation. The other one is Cassius. He still looks sturdy, but soon it will be night. Now is the time to leave this place, for we have seen it all. All right. Let's go back one aspect at a time and look at Satan here. So here in the first 6 lines of this description, the king of the vast kingdom of all grief, stuck out with half his chest above the ice. My height is closer to the height of giants than theirs is to the length of his great arms. Consider now how large all of him was, the body in proportion to his arms. So what do we learn here about Satan's appearance?
His arms are extremely long.
He's got these extremely long arms. Dante says, I am closer to the height of giants than the giants are to the length of his arms. So Satan as a whole is what? He's enormous is a good word for it. He's more than gigantic. The giants are gigantic. He's enormous, maybe we could say monstrous, monstrously large. And what does Dante call him when he starts this description?
The vast kingdom of all grief. The king.
The king. Yeah.
The kingdom of the vast kingdom of all grief.
Yes, king of the kingdom of grief. All right, let's talk about these two things. King of the kingdom of grief. What ideas is Dante communicating to us with these two things here? Satan's size and this title, King of the Kingdom of Grief. Well, the size, I think, is straightforward. What's the idea with the size?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
The size. Why does Dante describe Satan as being enormous?
Because they're stuck in half the chest above the ice. And it's
These arms are really long.
Okay, but why does Dante make him look this way? What's the point? Why does Dante portray him as being so large?
scary
Okay, he's frightening. Why? Why is a large thing frightening?
because it can crush you.
It could crush you. And this is a powerful being. Much more powerful than the giants even. And much more powerful than Dante is. Remember, what kind of a thing is Satan and the other demons? What kind of things are they?
They're angels.
They're angels. They're fallen angels. These are purely spiritual beings that are much more powerful than humans. What about him being called the king of the kingdom of grief?
Everybody lives in grief of what they did, and they're kind of in the life they live. So
So certainly hell is the kingdom of grief here, but why describe it here as a kingdom of grief? And why call him the king? What other things might this make us think of? The king of the kingdom of grief. What other kings might Dante talk about? We've seen the word emperor used also. To refer to whom?
Who's it?
Hmm?
Who's
Who's the other king that Dante might talk about? Well, that he does talk about in a couple of places.
Eight.
Hmm?
Eight.
Not so much. Okay, yeah. So, but right, we think of Hades from Greek mythology. Yes, the king of the underworld. But what else? What other king? Remember that hell in general and Satan in particular is like the opposite of God, or it's like God turned inside out, backwards, or something. This title, king, also. King of kings. Who's the king of kings? Okay, so in terms of in the Greek world, yes, you get Agamemnon, Lord of Men Agamemnon, or King of Men Agamemnon. But in a Christian context, who's the King of Kings? God, specifically Christ.
Right.
Christ is the King of Kings. We saw Dante describe Christ coming down into limbo as being like a king, and Satan here, he's a king in a sense, but of this bad place. He's like the opposite of Christ. And he's also stuck in the ice. Why is he stuck in the ice? What does that tell us about him?
He's in water. Where he is in water.
Well, it's not water, it's ice. Down here at the bottom of hell. Why is he stuck there? What's the significance of that?
Because the whaling has got.
Right, and now he's been defeated. He's locked up here. He's not free. We'll talk more about the ice in a minute. All right, continuing on to the next little bit. If once he was as fair as now he's foul, and dared to raise his brows against his maker, it is fitting that all grief should spring from him. He's foul, he's ugly. But if it's the case, Dante says, if it's the case that he was once as beautiful as he is ugly now, and then dared to rebel against the one who made him so beautiful, yes, then it's appropriate that he should be punished this way and that all these terrible things should come from him. How could something that was so beautiful turn against the one who made it that way? Think about the end of Sonnet 94 that we learned earlier this year. For sweetest things turn sourest by their deeds. Lilies that fester smell far worse than weeds. That's the same idea here. That Satan, the greatest of the angels, turned against God and became this horrible, foul creature. Okay, now let's take a look at these faces. Oh, how amazed I was when I looked up and saw a head. One head wearing three faces. One was in front, and that was a bright red. The other two attached themselves to this one, just above the middle of each shoulder. And at the crown, all three were joined in one. The right face was a blend of white and yellow, and left, the color of those people's skin who live along the river Nile's descent. What is...
Where are you? What line are you on?
That was lines, 37 to 45. The bottom of page 380. Okay, we focus in on one particular part of him. What part?
Shoulder?
Not his shoulders.
Face.
Yeah, his head. Okay, what do we learn about his... Now, why would we focus on the head?
You got two heads.
He doesn't have three heads
Oh, he has one head.
with three faces. So we focus on this because it's unusual. But Dante, the author here, has chosen to focus on the head. Remember, Satan, being an angel, has the ability to think and choose like people do. And so the head here is where we do our thinking and our decision making. The eyes are the window of the soul, the face and all that. And so we're focusing here on the head as the most important part of him. Okay, yes, and the first thing that we notice about the head is that it has what?
You said, huh?
The first thing that Dante notices about his head is that it has what?
Two faces.
Three faces. Three faces in one head. What should that make you think of?
The dog with
The Medusa thing? This three-headed snake?
Okay, so maybe some things from Greek mythology. But here in Christian context, we say three faces in one head.
Three personalities?
There's a similar phrase that I'm thinking of. Three what in one what?
Three emotions? Three persons.
Three persons in
One person.
one.
Five?
What is it? Three persons in one?
Three persons in-
No. In one God.
Uh,
Three persons in one God. But here, Dante says three faces in one head. Three persons in one God. What does that mean?
the Holy Spirit, God, and Jesus.
Yes, what do we call this thing?
Uh,
Starts with a T.
um,
The Holy...
the Holy. Um, Trinity. Oh, man. The Holy Trinity.
Yeah, three persons
Oh, man.
in one God. But here, Satan, three faces in one head. Like a perverted version of God. And what do we learn about these faces?
They're all in the same one. One was in the front that had a bright red,
Yes?
and the other two were attached themselves to.
What color are the other ones? So one's red.
White is the
Yeah, the one is sort of like a pale yellow. And the other one is... What does it say? The color of those people's skin who live along the river Nile's descent.
Where's the Nile?
Where's the Nile?
In Egypt.
In Egypt. So the third one is what color?
Brown.
Yeah, it's dark brown. Or black, yes. Three faces here. Specific colors mentioned also. These are not very attractive colors together. They don't make you think of like nice, happy things to have like red, yellow, black. I mean, I guess it's like the German flag. It's red, yellow, and black together. But there's it's not. It's even more jarring to have these three colors combined next to each other. But why these colors in particular? A couple of different things we could say here. One is one is that they represent different skin colors of people, and so different parts of the world. In the Middle Ages, the world, the land on the earth was thought of as having roughly this kind of shape. You've got three continents. You've got Europe over here. Oh, I can't even spell. Europe. You've got Asia here. And you've got Africa here. And that's like roughly the shape. Now notice east is up, because east is where Christ will come from. So, and what's in the center of these? What's roughly where Europe, Africa, and Asia meet? What important place is there?
Oh, isn't that where Jesus spoke?
Right, the Holy Land, and specifically the city of Jerusalem is there in the middle. And notice three different areas, possibly represented by the three different colors: Africa, Asia, and Europe. Musa, the translator, gives another possible interpretation. If we read his note here on page 384, he says, the symbolic value, this is towards the bottom of the page, the symbolic value of the three single faces has been much debated. Although many commentators believe that the colors, red, yellow, black, represent the three known continents, Europe, Asia, Africa, it seems more logical that they should be antithetically, it means as opposites, analogous to the qualities attributed to the Trinity. Back from Canto 3, where the gates of hell were describing why it was created. Therefore, highest wisdom would be opposed by ignorance, here represented by black. Divine omnipotence by impotence, powerlessness, yellow, and primal love by hatred, red. Different possible interpretations there. But here, notice, instead of like the Trinity, of having these three complete persons in the one God, here we have three faces. It's not even like there's one, it's not even like there are three persons here. It's just one Satan with these three weird faces in different colors. What do we see underneath the faces? Top of 381. Beneath each face, two mighty wings stretched out, the size you might expect of this huge bird. I never saw a ship with larger sails. Not feathered wings, but rather like the ones a bat would have. He flapped them constantly, keeping three winds continuously in motion to lock Cocytus eternally in ice. He wept from his 6 eyes, and down 3 chins were dripping tears, all mixed with bloody slaver. What does he have underneath his faces? What does he have?
Wings.
Wings. How many wings total?
6.
6 wings.
2 on each face.
He's got 2 coming from underneath each one. In Scripture, the seraphim, or a particular type of angels, the burning ones, are described as having 6 wings, 3 pairs. And here Satan has these 3 pairs of wings also. What are the wings doing? What does he do with the wings? Well, what do they look like?
Oh, they look like bat wings.
They look like bat wings. All right, bat-like wings.
You get it, what, to keep somebody different? Oh, to lock coyotes.
Cocytus, yeah.
Coyotes, entirely nice.
How are they locking Cocytus in ice?
Flap his wings.
He's flapping his wings, creating what?
Wind.
Right.
3 winds.
Creating these 3 winds in different directions. And what are these winds doing? This is the wind that Dante was feeling before. What does the wind do? How does this keep it frozen down there? What's it keeping away? Heat. No heat can come there because the cold air is constantly being pushed outwards from him. keeping it cold and frozen. God's love is often described as a fire, warmth. And here, as he's locked down there, he's continuously pushing that away and refusing it and keeping himself locked up there.
So hell's not actually hot.
Well, so Dante, there are parts of hell that are hot in Dante's vision of it. But here, he argues that the worst part is actually cold. You don't even have warmth down there. It's dark and cold. All right. So, and then we look back at his head, line 55. In each of his three mouths, he crunched a sinner with teeth like those that rake the hemp and flax. These two plants use certain tools. They're sort of like big forks to scrape them. Keeping three sinners constantly in pain. The one in front, the biting he endured was nothing like the clawing that he took. Sometimes his back was raked clean of its skin. That soul up there who suffers most of all, my God explained, is Judas Iscariot, the one with head inside and legs out kicking. As for the other two whose heads stick out, the one who hangs from that black face is Brutus. See how he squirms in silent desperation. The other one is Cassius. He still looks sturdy, but soon it will be night. So we look back at the faces, from the wings back to the faces, and what do we see in the faces?
6 eyes.
Okay, there are 2 eyes on each face. He's got 6 eyes. What are his eyes doing?
They're just dripping tears.
Tears, yes.
Mixed with bloody sleep.
Yeah, so he's got this bloody slave or slobber dripping from his mouth that the tears mixed with.
Oh, that's slobber.
Yes, slaver and slobber are pretty much the same thing. Yeah, so now, but why is there bloody saliva coming out of his mouth?
Look at the sins.
Right. What does he have in each mouth?
Because in 3 months he punched a sinner with teeth like those that break.
Yeah, he's got a sinner in each mouth.
I have it flat.
And not only is he biting them with his teeth, but he's also, at least one of them, he's scraping with his arms. Who are these 3? Judas, Brutus, and Cassius. Who are these 3?
Judas is the one who betrayed Jesus.
Right, Judas betrayed Christ. And what about Brutus and Cassius? Whom did they betray? So here, in this last section of hell, these are people who betrayed their masters or their lords. Satan betraying God who made him and made him so beautifully. Judas betraying Christ. Brutus and Cassius, whom did they betray?
I remember his name, but
Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar.
Oh, yeah,
they killed him.
Right. And Brutus in particular was treated very well by Caesar. The line from Shakespeare's play Julius Caesar, he says, "Et tu, Brute," you too, Brutus, as he's being stabbed. The other version recorded of Caesar's last words is in Greek, "Kais de paedion," you too, my child. He said to him, Brutus was someone whom he trusted and cared about, who then turned on him. So these are 3 sinners in the worst of the worst part of hell. Here, even within Judaica, this last section of hell, those who betray their masters, they get an even worse punishment here in the very mouth of Satan. Yes, lots of things that you could say and discuss about the different aspects of Satan compared to other things in the Inferno. But soon it will be night. Now it is the time to leave this place, for we have seen it all. Line 69. They don't even spend that much time looking at Satan. Now we've seen it all. It's time to leave. Line 70, towards the bottom of 381. I held on to his neck, as he told me to, while he watched and waited for the time and place. And when the wings were stretched out just enough, he grabbed on to the shaggy sides of Satan. Then downward, tuft by tuft, he made his way between the tangled hair and frozen crust. When we had reached the point exactly where the thigh begins, right at the haunch's curve, my guide, with strain and force of every muscle, turned his head towards the shaggy shanks of Dis and grabbed the hair as if about to climb. I thought we were heading back to hell. Hold tight, there is no other way, he said, panting, exhausted. Only by these stairs can we leave behind the evil we have seen. When he had got me through the rocky crevice, he raised me to its edge and set me down. Then carefully he climbed and joined me there. I raised my eyes, expecting I would see the half of Lucifer I saw before. Instead, I saw his 2 legs stretching upward. If at that side I found myself confused, so will those simple-minded folk who still don't see what point it was I must have passed. Get up, my master said, get to your feet. The way is long, the road a rough climb up. Already the sun approaches middle tiers. It was no palace promenade we came to, but rather like some dungeon nature built. It was paved with broken stone and poorly lit. Before we start to struggle out of here, O Master, I said when I was on my feet, I wish you would explain some things to me. Where is the ice? And how can he be lodged upside down? And how, in so little time, could the sun go all the way from night to day? You think you're still on the center's other side, he said, where I first grabbed the hairy worm of rottenness that pierces the earth's core. And you were there as long as I moved downward. But when I turned myself, you passed the point to which all weight from every part is drawn. Now, you are standing beneath the hemisphere which is opposite the side covered by land, where at the central point was sacrificed the man whose birth and life were free of sin. You have both feet upon a little sphere whose other side Judecca occupies. When it is morning here, there it is evening. And he whose hairs were stairs for our descent has not changed his position since his fall. When he fell from the heavens on this side, all of the land that once was spread out here, alarmed by his plunge, to cover beneath the sea and moved to our hemisphere. With equal fear, the mountain land piled up on this side fled and made this cavern here when it rushed upward. Below somewhere, there is a space, as far from Beelzebub as the limit of his tomb, no, not by sight, but only by the sound of a little stream that makes its way down here, through the hollow of a rock that it has worn, gently winding in gradual descent. My guide and I entered the hidden road to make our way back up to the bright world. We never thought of resting while we climbed. We climbed, he first and I behind, until through a small round opening ahead of us, I saw the lovely things the heavens hold, and we came out to see once more the stars. How do they escape hell? After seeing Satan, where does Virgil lead Dante?
He could go down, but I think gravity just because they passed the center.
Right. So as Satan's wings are flapping, they go there. Dante's holding on to Virgil, and Virgil starts climbing down Satan's hairy side. They go through a crack in the ice right next to his body. And at one point, the point exactly where the thigh begins, right at the haunch's curve, it's at the bottom of 381, Virgil then turns over and starts to climb upwards. And Dante thinks at first that they're going back into hell. But in fact, as you mentioned, this point here that they passed was the center of the earth. And so now the gravity is going the other way. Satan's here. Here's the center of the earth. They climb down. And so if the center of the earth is here, they're going down, and now they have to climb up. They get to the other side, and now Dante sees, instead of the part he saw before, now he sees Satan's legs sticking up out of the ground.
He's upside down.
Right, because now they're on the other side. When he fell down, he got stuck in this way. Dante said, Virgil tells us this is why, as they thought, all the land is over on this side of the earth, where Jerusalem is in the middle, as I said, and why this is all sea over here. Remember, they didn't know about the Americas. This is all ocean from when Satan fell. The land all shifted onto the other side of the earth, he tells us. And then they climb up. There's this little path, the stream running through it. Notice how we come for full circle. We climbed, he first and I behind, until through a small round opening ahead of us, I saw the lovely things the heavens hold, and we came out to see once more the stars. But here, instead of being in this dark wood from before, where there wasn't even that much to see in terms of light from the heavens, here they see once more the stars. They have this clear sky ahead of them on the opposite side of the earth from where they were before. They had entered hell over here, gone down the side, and now they've made their way through the earth. So the way out is sort of like the way in. And they had to go down to the center of the earth to get in, and now they're coming back away from the center of the earth. But it's not, it's similar, but it's not the same. It's not climbing back out. It's going out the other way. And notice going towards, back up the direction that Satan fell from, when he fell from heaven into hell. They're going up back in that direction towards where it was. And it's here that they're going to see the mountain of purgatory over here. Quick other comment, not really relevant to this from a literary perspective, but from a historical perspective, notice Dante is very aware that the earth is round.
Oh, okay.
And he understands that since it's round and gravity goes down, that if you pass the center, then things are going to be flipped around. And it's day on one side, and it's night on the other side. It was nighttime when they had, up here, when they'd gone down, and then as they're going down, day breaks over here, but now it's night again over here. So he's well aware that the earth is round and how gravity works, more or less, and the fact that, well, the one side of the earth is bright, the other is dark. Not as common as it once was, but the idea that like people thought that the earth was flat until Columbus came along is just not the case. Columbus was an Italian in the 15th century, and here we have Dante, an Italian in the 13th century, 200 years earlier, who's well aware that the earth is round. The difference was that they thought that the earth was smaller than it was. Their calculations were off by a bit, so they thought the earth was smaller. So they thought that going around like this, basically from, they thought that this trip, going around this way, was shorter than it was. And they didn't realize that the Earth is actually larger, and there's this whole other line message.
Sorry.
Sure. All right, questions about Canto 34, the very end. Well, the end of the beginning. The end of the beginning, because then there's all of purgatory and heaven. This is only the first part. It's not the end. It's a wonderful beginning, but it's not the end. And I also love, not only is it calm and beautiful, and they haven't been able to see the sky up to this point because hell's dark and it's underground, but also Dante says, I saw the lovely things the heavens hold. That word, the heavens, in most languages, is ambiguous. It could either mean the sky or heaven, like where God is. And so here, not only does he see the stars and these things in heaven, but also this idea that he's going to see good things again and start moving towards holiness. Thank you very much. Canto 34 questions on Friday. It's possible we'll miss a couple of days of school because of weather events. Please make sure you're going to do that creative writing assignment. You've got about a week and a half to do it, so you should definitely be able Get that done. Tomorrow, if we're here, Friday, if we're here, we'll start talking about tragedy.
It's supposed to snow tonight.
Next,
It's supposed to snow tonight.
I think this evening. It's supposed to start. Anyway, thank you very much. Goodbye.